Skyrim in Space. Over my past few Starfield videos, this has been a pretty consistent theme in the comments section. Some people have been entirely expecting Starfield to be that type of game, and others, for some reason, have been expecting something entirely different. In this video then, we're going to try and set the record straight based upon what we know so far. Whichever way you cut it though, Starfield is going to be a big game. And that quite naturally means we're going to be seeking knowledge of mysteries and the unknown. And talking of seeking knowledge, here's a quick word from Brilliant, today's sponsor. Have you ever gazed up at the night sky and wondered about the life of stars or the ultimate fate of our universe? Well, there's a straightforward way to unlock these cosmic secrets. Brilliant is a gateway to interactive learning, especially when it comes to subjects like math, data science and computer science. But today I want to talk about their course on astrophysics. As you know, I'm a big space buff and this course has been captivating. With lessons ranging from the basics to the intricacies, there's always something new to discover. And the best part, Brilliant is constantly updated with fresh content every month. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned space buff, Brilliant ensures the content is tailored to your level, allowing you to explore at your own pace, and if you ever hit a cosmic conundrum, there are insightful hints and comprehensive solutions to light your way. So, if you're ready to embark on an interstellar adventure and uncover the secrets of the cosmos, why not visit brilliant.org/obsidianant or click the links in the video description to get a 30-day free trial, and the first 200 to sign up will get a 20% discount on the annual plan. I think, for the most part, anyone who's been following Bethesda games for any length of time will realise that definitely Starfield is going to be very much similar to Skyrim, and indeed the whole Elder Scrolls series as well as the Fallout series. But that said, there's also a bunch of people out there with crazy high expectations, and they're thinking that just maybe Starfield is going to be a very different type of game. So let's walk point by point through why Starfield is like Skyrim, why it's not like Skyrim and so much more, and also why it's not at all like other space sims out there. First and foremost then, the hallmark of Bethesda games is of course their open world, their living, breathing universes. In fact, this is something that very few, if any, other single-player titles actually achieve. The city of Whiterun, for example, in Skyrim is a wonderful example of this. As you approach Whiterun for the first time, you're greeted with the sight of that sprawling city nestled in the heart of the tundra with the majestic Dragon's Reach perched atop. The city itself is home to a wide range of characters. From the battle-hardened companions at Jorviskir to the feuding Greymaids and Battleborn families, the city is a melting pot of narratives, and you can interact with all of this and directly influence how much of it plays out. And this theme, this level of detail is spread right throughout the entire Skyrim game world. And what makes this so unique about these types of games is how your actions can interweave with this background tapestry. It means that you as a player have a multitude of choices. You can go out there and play the main campaign for the game. Alternatively, you can completely ignore that main campaign and instead play off and play against this interwoven tapestry of politics and a living, breathing world. In short, you're free to do what you like, and not in the sense of a live service online game which is largely remaining static, but in the sense that you are a central character within this world. It is very much alive, you can learn to be a part of it, but also it will react to you. Bethesda have said that Starfield is very much going to follow this type of methodology. So yes, in this sense, Starfield is going to be a lot like Skyrim. Now, another hallmark of Bethesda games like this is the deep lore and world building, and that means that pretty much everything in the game can be interacted with, and that means furniture, environmental items, and even books. Yes, you can pretty much read every single book that's in the game. And this was true for both Morrowind and Oblivion as well, not to mention Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. All of this will almost certainly be present within Starfield, another area where it will certainly share some similarities with other Bethesda titles. Now, another area is dynamic NPCs. Now, NPCs of course are present in pretty much every single player game out there, but the amount and to the extent to which you can interact with them certainly differs. What's always been interesting about Bethesda titles is their Radiant AI. Now this does get some flack from some quarters, but for the most part I've always found it to be super interesting. It's a system that allows NPCs to make choices and engage in various activities, and this can be simple things such as eating, sleeping, and interacting with their environment. In fact, it's not at all unheard of to see an NPC working in a field in a small little village somewhere, and then later on finding them walking along a road to another village to complete a particular activity. Now, these are not just chance encounters. All of these NPCs are simulated in the background whilst you're playing, so if you're at one end of the map, the other NPCs are still simulated at the other end of the map, albeit at a much lower priority. It means that every part of the game world is always living and breathing and interacting. It's always on the move. This is also something that will be a part of Starfield. Again though, it seems that this will be on a much bigger scale due to the sheer size and complexity of Starfield. We've already touched on the idea of factions and guilds, and yes, these all exist within the Elder Scrolls series as well as the Fallout series. It's also been confirmed that they will exist within Starfield. In fact, Bethesda have made a pretty big deal about highlighting the variety of factions. We know that players will be able to join all these factions and that each of them will have their individual unique storylines. In previous titles, people could join the ranks of these factions and slowly work their way up. But perhaps more importantly, players could affect the decisions that these factions would make, which in turn would have an impact on the wider world. This then is a huge part of the appeal of Bethesda titles for fans of those games. It's also one of the reasons why players could simply ignore the main campaign and still spend tens if not hundreds of hours exploring the game world and directly interacting with it and becoming a part of the world and the life there. In short then, all of these things and much more are what Bethesda mean when they say Starfield will have all the hallmarks of a Bethesda title, that Starfield will feature the Bethesda DNA. It means that no one should be surprised when they jump into Starfield and find that it is indeed like Skyrim and Fallout, that yes, it's like Skyrim in Space. Bethesda have confirmed this again and again. But also, Starfield is planned to be much more. Let's look at a few of those points. So, one of the things that makes Starfield very different to what has come before is that, as Bethesda have said, this is their first new IP in over 25 years, and it's a significant departure in tone from Elder Scrolls and Fallout. Also, unlike those other titles, Starfield is going to feature multiple worlds. It's quite likely that each world is going to be at least the size of Skyrim, if not larger, and there's going to be many of these worlds, over 1,000 in fact. It means that the scale of Starfield is going to be on a different level entirely. But that in turn has certainly led to a few concerns, with people feeling that a lot of the content is going to be repetitive or somewhat empty. Well, Todd Howard has confirmed that 90% of these worlds are indeed going to be barren, and that players should only expect to find resources there and very little else. In fact, Bethesda have been very clear on this, so again, it's another area where players shouldn't be surprised when they jump into the game and find that there's only 10% of the overall planets that do contain life. It doesn't mean that those other planets are going to be useless, it simply means that they're going to be somewhat barren, although albeit they will contain resources and maybe some other minor activities for players to do. All of this connects into the idea of spaceships, and this is something again very different to what we've seen before in a Bethesda title. Players will be able to head on into space and fly around with their spaceships, getting involved in combat, exploration and other activities in the void of space. We don't know yet the exact extent of what all of this means, but we do know that players will not only be able to visit planets, but also space stations too. The other thing that's very different when it comes to Starfield is going to be the combat. Now it seems that combat is not going to be using the VAT system that was found in Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, whereby players could actively pause the combat and select targets. This instead is going to be very much like an FPS combat game. It also means that the combat is likely to be far more interactive and far more responsive and fast-paced than what we found in the likes of Skyrim. So this again is another area in where Skyrim and Starfield will certainly differ. Now moving on, there's one other thing I want to touch on, and that is the idea of Starfield being a full-on space sim. I've seen a lot of people comparing Starfield to Elite Dangerous or even Star Citizen, and I just feel that is not really an exact, very good comparison. I think they're going to be very different games. I'm not going to dwell too much on these specific points, but I want to go through a few items that, well, make Starfield very, very different. For example, Elite Dangerous has a simulated economy. This is to some extent involved with players, where market prices fluctuate based upon the supply and demand, and players can influence the economy through trading, mining and other such activities. This is something that Bethesda has confirmed will not be present in Starfield. You'll be able to still buy things and trade them, but it won't be based on a dynamically changing economy. Online worlds. So Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen, these offer massively multiplayer online worlds. Players here can interact, they can trade, form alliances or engage in combat with each other all in real time. This obviously is going to be very different. Starfield is an immersive single-player world. Now, this brings Starfield many advantages. It means that the world can be very reactive towards the player. It can also have a deep and compelling narrative. It also means that the game doesn't have to be balanced towards PvP or any such activity, and allows the player a lot more freedom. But obviously, it also means that you won't be experiencing Starfield with your friends in the same environment. It won't be a multiplayer game. Another area is realistic orbital mechanics. Now, Starfield has been confirmed to have some semblance of this. If you look up in the sky and see a planet there or a moon, you'll be able to visit it, but it won't be like Elite Dangerous, where you find a full-on one-to-one simulated galaxy. The sheer scale of the galaxies in both Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous mean that space travel, and indeed travel throughout the game, can be very, very time-consuming. Travel here is somewhat akin to what you may find in simulation titles such as Microsoft Flight Simulator. It all takes a whole load of time. And yet, time investment is another area. In Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen, players have to spend a lot of time basically grinding for materials, grinding for credits, as well as grinding for other aspects of, well, your involvement within that game world. Starfield is going to be somewhat different. Of course, players will need to spend time to improve their character and gain more resources, but the focus here from the developers isn't on keeping the players hooked into a never-ending live service. Instead, the hook here for players is a living, breathing and immersive world, and for me, that is perhaps the most appealing thing about Starfield and the thing I'm most eager to try out. So yes, that gives us a very high-level overview as to why yes, Starfield is indeed Skyrim in space, but also why it's so much more, and also why players should expect Starfield to be a very different experience to something like Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen. Do let me know about your thoughts on all of this in the comment section below. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.